Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
The truth shall set you free.
You can't handle the truth.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
That's not how the Force works.
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
I'd buy that for $1.
Hasta la vista, baby.
This woman has to be gotten to a hospital.
Hospital? What is it?
It's a big building with patients. That's not important right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Hello and welcome to Creative Control, the new podcast brought to you by Zito's Gang, where we reshape cinema for the better. I'm your host, Ken Ackler, and thank you for joining us for episode 4. So on each episode, we're going to discuss in our expert opinions that if we had creative control, how we would shape a future movie project or correct mistakes of the past. Joining me on today's episode is fellow Zito's Gang stars Neil Cobbin, Sasha Olari, and Leo Van Damage. And also my special guest today is Andreas, back for another round. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Oh my wa mo shindadu nani. Sorry, I just had to say that out loud.
All right, so today's episode is all about reshaping and fixing the Terminator franchise. So it started off with two classic movies. Some people have their preferences, 1 over 2, 2 over 1, but I think we can agree there's been a bunch of subpar sequels since then. So we discussed where did it all go wrong for the franchise, and the team's going to talk about what they would have done differently and where they would take it from here. I think there's a couple of ways that we could change the past. You know, T1 and T2 wraps up a storyline. And I think T3 could have very much just been a different Terminator, a different character. Didn't have to be a John Connor issue. Didn't have to be Judgment Day. There's different timelines, different people. And I think the mistake the franchise made was kept focusing too much on John Connor and the T-800, you know. So I think they could have done something different. I don't know. I didn't watch the Sarah Connor Chronicles and stuff like that, but I think they tried to do some different things in there. But
it was very good.
Yeah, and
exactly what you said though. They've just concentrated on John Connor the entire time.
Yeah, and
all
they
blew their wad.
Yeah, and all they tried to do to
Terminator 2 blew its wad.
Yeah, and all they tried to do to make it different was keep changing the bad Terminator. Yeah. You know, trying to give him different powers, different upgrades and stuff like that. So
there's a few things that I mentioned recently though, like, so I know Neil has, obviously you saw that I wrote about and Satch saw about it.
Yeah.
That I wrote, and Andreas you wouldn't because we're not friends on Facebook, but we'll change that today, my friend.
We'll change it.
But yeah, so obviously how crap his foster parents are. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that. Basically, to boil it down, Andreas, is that like if you're ever a foster parent, don't be the foster parents that John Connor has, because if a massive motorbike guy turns up at your house asking for John Connor and you don't call the social services, and then the policeman turns up and asks the same question and you mention it in passing, like, oh, a big guy with a bike turned up this morning as well, you know, like that's some really crap parenting. And then obviously you know they're pieces of shit to him because when he calls the house and John, the T-1000 is impersonating his foster mother, and she's like being super nice. He's like, oh, she's never this nice. Yeah, he's like, something's wrong. She's never this nice, which means that she's a total piece of shit to him most of the time.
She's in it for the money.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, she's just a piece of shit. And like, you know, the dad's a piece of shit as well, because he's like, oh, you know, that fucking worthless piece of shit when he's talking about the dog. So you know that guy's an asshole as well, because he doesn't like dogs. And then obviously he gets knifed in the face. But then, like, yeah, I mean, you know, Neil said about the guy getting thrown through the window right at the beginning of the bar. Do you remember? In the bar scene. You know what it is?
It's like,
but I was like, have you ever been thrown through a window by a T-800? Kind of sucks. I'm sure the guy's not going to get up for a while, you know?
No, but I was just thinking about it in my head. It just clicked. It was like the logic of it. I was like, okay, you've been thrown through a window. All right. I'm not saying, you know, you're going to pop up like, you know, you're in the WWE, but you've been thrown through a window and the Terminator has had this time to beat the shit out of whoever else he needs to beat the shit out of, dash the guy into the kitchen, walk into the kitchen, get this guy to strip naked, put his clothes on, then leave the bar. And you're asking, and the thing is, it's not that the guy's unconscious. The guy's awake because he sees Arnold coming out and he just
But I'm sure the T800 is a very efficient dresser. Like, he probably does it very quickly. He measured the guy up. You know when you try a shot and you're like, is this fair? You look. But he already did that on his cursory evaluation when he was doing his ocular exam on the guy. He was like, boop, boop, boop. He did an ocular pat down, to paraphrase It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
It's like Beyonce when she does a costume change. You know, they got to do it
quick, fast,
quick
in a hurry,
time.
man. Just boom, boom, in and out, just like a model. And the T800, he's efficient. He's just like, he told him exactly, no fucking right, closed boots motorcycle, give it to me now. And the guy's like, forgot to say please, fucks them all up, gets stressed real quick, and then just nicks the dude's bike, innit? And then that guy, the fat guy, is like, oh, I can't let you take the white guy's wheels. And he just jacks his fucking gun and his glasses, and he's like, peace.
The glasses, that's the ultimate disrespect as far as I'm concerned, right? It's not that you stole the guy's gun, right? You moved fast enough, you took his gun, you know, you showed I'm better than you, that's the end of it. But then it was just literally like, it's like, oh, when he took his glasses and then put them on, to me, that's just literally, that's the equivalent of like, yeah.
Sleeping with your wife.
I'm gonna sleep with your wife.
Yeah.
Say for the Ray-Bans, innit? Bye. You know, that's literally the lyric
of it.
In that moment, that's the Johnny Cage moment, innit? When he's like, there's a $500 sunglasses, asshole.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's that, and then there was the other thing that I said was like the Terminator is always you know how they got the scene in the movie where I don't know. Okay, so Andreas, have you seen the director's cut of T2?
I've seen many versions.
Okay, have you seen
I saw it a
bit
few
in
months
T2?
ago again. So tell me a bit.
Okay, so there's a bit in T2 where they open up his head. Have you seen that scene, Andreas?
No, because I rewatched it a little while ago and I'd remember this.
Okay, so there's two bits in that movie. There's one major bit in that movie where when they break out Sarah Connor, right? They break her out, and she's in the car and she's telling off what's his name? They start doing like, he starts sewing up her back because she got cut. And then she's looking at the jacket, and John Connor's looking at the jacket.
Yeah, he pulls it up, all the holes in, and they start taking
like,
the bullets out of him.
Yeah, and he says, "Do you feel pain?" And he's like, "Yeah, my brain registers this thing called my computer, whatever."
Yeah, I know.
And then there's a bit, so right after, like literally just in that scene, John Connor asks him, "Can you do you learn? Do you do this?" And then there's two versions of the alternate scene. One version, which most people have seen, which is the theatrical cut. And my argument as to why this actually I understand why this became the original cut, is when he says, "Oh, I have a neural net processor, it learns as I go along, the more contact I have with humans." Sarah Connor says to him, "Oh, that because it makes you a more efficient killer." And he's like, "Yes." And then that's it. And then the next scene you see is him learning how to say all the words, "Us,
yeah,
la vista," and all that shit, yeah? There's another scene to that, which I don't know if you want to Google it and watch it after this podcast, but there's another scene to that, which is actually pretty cool, where he says, "No, I'm basically on read only, like a USB drive, you're on read only, and that's it. You can't edit it." I'm on read only. You need to take out my neural net processor, flip this little switch, and then put it back in, and then I can start learning. So then James Cameron, because Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, she's actually got a twin sister, and that's the first time you see twins in that movie, because there's another scene as well where a lot of people don't know that there's twins in that film too, where they take like, on one side of it is they got like this mirror, but it's not a mirror, it's just a hole in the wall. And on one side you've got Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sarah Connor's twin, and on the other side, where the camera is facing towards like the mirror, you have a dummy of Arnold Schwarzenegger's head, and then Sarah Connor's sister is Sarah Connor, is mimicking what her sister's doing, and they're like making it look like a mirror scene, if that makes sense, to open up his brain to pull out the fucking thing to flip the switch. And then Sarah Connor almost just breaks the chip. She's like, "I'm gonna destroy the chip," and then this Terminator's like useless.
Done. Yeah.
And then John Connor says, "No, don't do it." Da, da, da. And then they flip him into learning mode, and then he learns how to smile. And again, that was all cut out. So the point I'm trying to make is that prior to that, like you can tell that the Terminator's already learning, because before that scene, he asks John Connor why he shouldn't kill people. Remember, he's like, you can't kill people, and he's like, why?
Yeah.
He's like, because you can't. He's like, but why? And he's like, because you can't. Now let's go save my mum. And then he asks him again in the car when he says to him, what's wrong with your eyes? Which means that he's curious, like, why? No. Why do you cry is after when they're fixing the car.
Oh, he's fixing the car with his mum. Yeah.
Yeah, when they've had their burgers, yeah. So that's when he learns how to smile, when he copies that dude's smile, does that really goofy smile. If you guys remember that. Yeah, that's it. That's the one, Ken, yeah. So that's prior to all that. So essentially you can kind of see that he's already in learning mode prior to this, and that's why he put that one scene in, because essentially it cuts out everything I've just said, which is about, I don't know, 5 minutes of footage.
I mean, technically, I just realized something. Technically, and it's a very, very small technicality, he is still in reading mode, because when he's like, why can't I kill someone? And he's just like, you just can't. He's not given an explanation for why he can't kill anyone. But the next moment that involves gunfire or anything, John Connor's like, promise me you won't kill anyone.
He says, I swear. He goes, and he's like, what does that mean? He goes, just say I swear. And then he shoots the guy in the knees and goes, he'll live.
Yeah.
just fucks off, yeah.
So technically,
I see what you're saying. He asked the question, but he just followed the command. So he's not necessarily learning at that point. But you can see why he took it out. But I think it's just a great scene, the way they did it, technically.
The thing
that first one, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the security guard that, okay, so, again.
The guy getting his coffee from the vending machine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
they're twins.
The guy.
Yeah, they're both in Good Morning Vietnam. They're the two guys
too.
opposite Robin Williams.
And they're in Gremlins too as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, when Alex Max is way out of the floor, which to me, like, it exemplifies the biggest problem with the entire Terminator franchise is the T-1000, right? Simple as, because they blew their load. The T-1000 is way too much of a good villain. Like, you look at the TX, she sucks because she's essentially mimetic polyalloy over a T-800, right? But essentially, with that can make guns from her hand.
So I mean, there's nothing wrong with the female casting. There's nothing wrong with having a female Terminator, because it brought a different balance.
No.
But I just don't know if it was. I don't know if they should have.
It's not as good though. Like, if you look at that Terminator and look at the T-1000, it's an infinitely better villain.
Yeah.
Like, it just across the board.
In terms of, definitely in terms of like what you can do with
survivability.
Yeah.
Like
The problem with
comparison.
The problem with the TX wasn't that she was female. The problem with the TX was that they were trying to overthink an idea on how to one up the last one.
Yeah.
And they did stupid things in the writing where they're like, I can control all of this. And it's like, wait a minute, that car is manual. There's no way in hell that this would be able to control that. You know, maybe
I will say this, in the new one, Dark Fate, that's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of Terminator, right?
Yeah,
Except,
that's right.
I don't know. Have you guys seen Dark Fate yet?
Yeah, it's got liquid alloy over the top of it, isn't it? Liquid metal.
Right. Okay. So the way that works, the way the Terminator separates itself and becomes essentially two Terminators, is fucking cool. Like, that for me, I was like, that's what should have happened in T3. It should have separated it and used itself twice, because now you basically have a T800. And you've got a mimetic T-1000 at the same time.
Dark Fate's supposed to be the sequel to T2, technically, isn't it? So,
if you really want to be technical, you fucking T3 is actually fucking the Universal Studios ride.
Yeah.
With the T1 million, right? At the end, the big tentacle spider thing. That should.
John Peters
did John Peters produce that?
No, it was all Cameron. Cameron directed it.
Fucking Neil is on my wavelength, bro. Huh? What'd you say?
James Cameron actually directed it.
I know, but we're just saying, did John Peters produce it? Because obviously John Peters with the giant spiders.
Yeah, I mean, the Terminator's probably suffered from the fact that its rights have transferred to so many studios. Because after the first two, it transferred to, I think, Warner Brothers for a period. And then it moved over to TriStar. And then now is it Skydance?
Who was it who bought it for $15 million? They bought the rights for $15 million.
I think that was Skydance. I think the most recent.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was. No. I think it was after T2. Someone bought the rights for like $15 million, which is tuppence.
It went from Warner Brothers to TriStar to Skydance, I think. So I think one of those did. But you know, ultimately when it went to a different studio, I think they also changed the rating because there was an R-rated movie. T2 was, I don't know what it was released at in the States. I don't know if it was
15.
like PG-13 kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like
no, it
15.
wasn't.
Yeah, it was a 15.
It was a 15. It was a 15 in the UK. It was
I had it on
definitely an
VHS,
NC-17 out over there.
NC-17, right? Okay, fine. And you know, so he toned it down a little bit, but you know, does have some graphic scenes. But then you know, it was all about the cash cow after that. And okay, so after T3, then we had what? Salvation.
Yeah.
Now that was supposed to be a new trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But how much do you think?
I'm not going to lie. I have a guilty. That's a guilty.
Yeah. How much do you think it was the fact that there was all the stuff with Christian Bale on set shouting at people, had a bit negative press. They kind of gave it away in the trailer. I think there's a lot of things happening. How much do you think that led to that being a disappointment? In the sense that actually, if you look at the movie itself, it's not a bad movie.
Yeah.
It's not a good movie
People think. I don't think it affected it as much as people think, because I mean, I recently watched this. It was just a video. I think it might have been a What Culture video, but it was just a video, and it said that it was like 10 movie secrets that, you know, the industry doesn't want you to know.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was that film trailers they spoil the film on purpose, because they were like basically that the general audience, so not individuals like us, the general audience who's just like, oh, I'm gonna go and see this film, you know, they don't say, oh, the latest Terminator. They're like, oh, you know, the robot film with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. Those people, they basically want to know what's going to happen before they go and see the film.
Yeah.
That is
a lot of trailers are actually done by third-party companies. They're not done by anybody associated with the film.
Yeah,
they cut it together. They put the music over the top of it, and it's up to them. It's only the studios who are very close control of their product who will review that before it's released to avoid spoilers and stuff like that. So, but yeah, majority of them, and that's why a lot of them you see in the trailers, everything from it almost paces through the film in terms of its narrative, and you kind of get an indication of what happens towards the end. And that's nothing to do with necessarily the actors, the director, or producers.
Yeah, but I mean, so there was that particular thing. But I mean, really and truly, if you're not a hardcore Terminator fan, knowing that, you know, Sam Worthington's character is a Terminator doesn't mean shit. It genuinely doesn't mean shit. Like, you know, because you have to remember, by the time Terminator Salvation came out, there was an entire generation of people who would be going to watch this film who essentially only ever knew Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, as the hero. So they never looked at it like, oh, you know, oh, wow, he was the, you know, it's like we're holding on to the fact of he was a villain, then he became a hero. And if you watch the trailer for T2, you don't know he's a hero.
No, it's not. It's not told in the original trailer.
Yeah, so it's, you know, we're watching it and it's like the element of surprise. So when we have a big surprise thrown at us, it's like, oh, well, this is bullshit. Like, you know, I now know this moment I was going to be like, you know, that's gone. So, like, what's the point? So, but we're the individuals who will make a whole, you know, big song and dance and fuss all over, you know, the internet, all over social media, and basically just we'll lose our shit because we've had something spoilt for us. And that will be picked up by, you know, film outlets and, you know, the film media, because of I think that they're talking, that's their job. Their job is to talk about what's going on within the realm of film. You know, if their job was to talk about what's going on in the general public, they wouldn't give a shit.
Okay, so I kind of think we've taken a big tangent here.
Yeah.
So on that rationale, Andreas, is that Andreas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm here.
Bro,
Andreas,
what was you on the fucking screen, man?
Sorry, I wanted to pronounce it properly, or learn how to. What's your take on Terminator franchise?
Yeah,
Would you
haven't-
continue it, and what would you do? And
Okay.
then after him, someone else come up with their crazy idea.
Okay.
He's
Well,
on the least talking.
Number one, I haven't seen any of the Terminators after Terminator 2. I haven't seen 3. I know
You're
there's a woman
blessed,
in it.
You are a rare form.
Salvation looked like a glum piece of shit to me, and the fact that it was directed by McG, I was like, there's no way. I started watching Genesis. Honest to God, I just thought, what's going on? And halfway through, I thought, no. And I haven't seen Dark Fate because I hear it starts off with them killing John Connor to begin with, undoing everything. So I just thought,
Bro, that
you know
scene
what?
is sick, though.
That scene
is
was
sick.
genuine shock.
I like the fact that happened.
They
Okay,
talk about
this
it on.
is
They talk
something
about it
different.
on Corridor Crew, right? They broke it down on Corridor Crew, and they broke down like basically it's all like John Connor is completely CGI. Everything. Like, it's not
Well, look, I will watch
even
it.
a little boy.
Once it's on sort of
whole
Netflix
thing.
or Amazon, I will watch it. But also the reviews put me off. A good friend of mine who loves Terminator, he's a massive movie fan, said to me that the film was dog shit. So I just thought, the negative reviews, but I will watch it. And plus, I haven't seen any of the others. Anyway, I agree with everyone here. T2 wrapped it up perfectly. It was the perfect end, yeah. But Hollywood, they like to milk IPs. If they're going to do it, then why don't we try between us to come up with at least something that might work?
Right.
So my idea was a sort of, those quasi reboots. They're not really a reboot. They're a continuation, but they are a reboot. Creed sort of done it with Rocky and did it really well. So I thought of this. A movie is set between T1 and T2. Okay. So it's a year after T1, or roughly, it may be 7-8 months. And I wanted to do something that goes back to its sci-fi horror roots.
Yes.
Because to be honest, you can't top T2. Don't try, you're not going to top it. It's just perfect. So I'm thinking, rewatching Terminator 1, it's really good. I think it's perfect. A lot of people call it a perfect movie. So I'm
shit
not the
foster
only one.
parents. It's got shit foster parents, but go on.
Okay, yeah. You can nitpick anything in any film, but if you're enjoying it, then you kind of skip over those things. But yeah, I get it.
You are right. You're totally right.
But when you watch Terminator 1, you can see how it's still really good and it holds up, but there's things that can be improved on. There is room for it. So I'm thinking a simple, stripped back, lean hunt movie, yeah? Sort of a non-stop roller coaster ride of a movie that's filled with the tension, the scares, the blood, and the violent action sequences. Sort of containing that same atmosphere as the first, that sort of type of synth score. You have the classic Terminator score. So, and keeping the budget really low as well, because that will restrict it. So we don't need flashbacks of post-apocalyptic visions where they have to build these massive sets. Just we know we've seen it.
What's the end game to that though? So like, was it lead up to T2? Would it go somewhere else?
Yeah, it's between them. I don't want to start going too much into. Let's just say this happened between T1 and T2. Okay, they never mention it in T2, but
you have a jumping point actually.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Andrea.
Yeah.
So, you have a jumping point.
Yeah.
Which is that think of where Sarah Connor starts in Terminator 2. She starts in the asylum, right? And we know that she's in the asylum because she tried to blow up Cyberdyne systems.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So essentially, sort of the span of this movie doesn't go that far ahead. But yes, you have that sort of road that she's on. So it can lead. It gives you a sort of inwards into that road. But I'm thinking the Terminator, you recast him, I'm thinking Henry Cavill. And I'll tell you why. Because he could do bad. Yeah, he was, he can do villain. That did it in Mission Impossible. He's a good actor and he's built really well.
And he's essentially like a Terminator anyway, because in Mission Impossible, he reloads his arms, isn't it? Do you remember?
Yeah, he reloads his arms, that's it. And also when he's playing bad Superman in the delightful Justice League, he's got that, he can play a villain. Anyway, Sarah Connor, I'm not really that fussed who
The
plays her.
delightful Justice League. You almost made me spit out my drink, bro.
Yeah, I'm not really that fussed who plays her. I like Micah Monroe from The Guest and It Follows. She's kind of got an 80s look. Because bear in mind, this film's going to be set in 1985.
Yeah.
And the director, I thought Lee Whannell. And the reason I'm saying it is because Upgrade blew my mind. I love the way he directed action in that, and the way he took that action forward in Invisible Man, the techniques he used. He's good at creating that sort of sci-fi horror-ish
Hold on,
thing.
sorry. What film?
Invisible Man.
Upgrade.
Upgrade and Invisible Man.
The
I've seen
director of
Invisible
those
Man.
two movies. You'll love Upgrade.
Okay.
It's really good.
Oh,
You've not seen
Upgrade.
Upgrade?
Nah, I haven't watched
Oh,
it.
you're in for a treat, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, it taps into that sort of RoboCop, Terminator, that sci-fi horror of the 80s. So essentially, that's my casting, that's my director, that's the feel. And just the opening will start, that classic font, Los Angeles, 2029 AD. The war rages between the machines and the human resistance fighters. Inside the facility, we see a tall, naked figure kneeling in that time displacement machine, surrounded by the ball of light, the lightning bolts flashing around him. Figure disappears, credits roll, Terminator theme music plays. Remember, I am almost redoing a lot of things, but also sort of a new story. Terminator 85. That's the title that popped in my head. Basically,
you know what?
the machine.
You don't even have to have Sarah Connor in it. One of the things I loved about the Sarah Connor Chronicles was that Skynet sent back Terminators anyway to the past to build upon the future, if that makes sense. Like what they do, and that's kind of touched on in Dark Fate as well, because there were different Terminators. Whenever they went back, they had different missions. You know, so there'd be like a certain amount of Terminators that would probably be like, yeah, we got to kill this person, or there'll be other Terminators. There'll be other Terminators sent back to probably do something that would
change the future.
The future so that Skynet exists later on, etc. So it could just be like something along those lines, and then you can bring in a brand new protagonist. Something where we're not beholden to the law and stuff.
To the law, I'm
totally.
Completely cool with that. I don't.
You could have like a John Connor reference or whatnot in terms of he's a big military leader from the future, blah blah blah, and like that he might be out there. But you could bring in new characters and stuff and build them up and do anything.
Exactly. So essentially, as long as they keep that sort of feel, that stripped back hunt movie, roller coaster of a ride, bring in the violence, the synth score, the feel of the first, rather than this overblown action film. And you're right. I'm not that bothered if it is Sarah. I just thought it might be cool. You're seeing the Sarah Connors that's pregnant with John. So it's making it harder for her to run, defend herself. She has grown tougher since her last encounter. She's more organized and focused, knowing that once her son's born, she has to teach him. But you are right. I'm not that tied to that. I did think, I don't want another character who's sent back in time to defend her or protect her. So I thought of the fact of, with Skynet sort of seeing what happens in Terminator 1, watching the tapes of Reese's explanation to Dr. Silverman in the police station, where the T-800 took out 30 cops. And then at the end, they obviously retrieved the cyborg's remain. They now sort of have this sort of Black Ops military team led by a Reese-type character. And in this movie, he's the one, that team is sent to protect Sarah from the Terminator. And because it's a whole team, it gives some interesting body count. And you can even have in a twist towards the end, that lead character reveals his forearm and he's got that laser mark. So he is from the future, sent back. That could be a little thing. The only thing I'd ask for is no I'll be backs, no motorcycle leather gear, and no taking clothes off punks or Hell's Angels. Other than that, I'm good to go. Whether it's Sarah Connor, someone else, I'm just thinking low budget, lean, Lee Whannell, Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
That's my pitch. Terminator 85.
I like it.
That is good.
Neil, what would you do if you had creative control?
It's so weird. Like I said, it's not going to be like the last time you give me the option. and I basically a whole script. For me, I'm thinking very different to what you were saying, Andres. I like, because you haven't seen it, there is a deleted scene, an actual original ending to Terminator 2, which would have put to bed all of this shit. And it's the end of it is, you know, at the end of Terminator 2, Sarah Connor has her narration.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The narration continues after where it stops, where it's the road. It continues, and then it shows like.
Actually, it doesn't have the road. It's a different narration altogether.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, she's in a park.
Completely, because they don't
like,
have the road shot.
It goes on, and it goes to her sitting in a park as an old woman.
Yeah, that's right.
And she's like, you know how she was always there with making tapes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's still there doing that. She's making tapes, and she's like looking at John. John's in the park with his own kid as a grown man, and he's like, I think he's a senator or something. So he's, you know, still fighting for humanity, but as a senator, you know, doing it that way. And I'm like, I bet Jim Cameron was like, man, I should have just put that in there at the end of the film and then avoided all of this hassle. But that didn't happen. I'd go real different. For me, I would like, I'd like to see, my idea would basically be now that we start essentially in present day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, starting in present day, the events of Terminator 1 and 2 have happened, right? But what we have now is a Sarah Connor she's living by a completely different alias now. She is Sarah Connor. We know her as Sarah Connor, but I don't know, she's Jane Smith or whatever, right? Because Sarah Connor is a wanted criminal. So she's not Sarah Connor anymore. But what happened is after the events of Terminator 2, she's gone on the run. She basically had no choice but to go on the run. I have it that so she's basically living as I guess you could say she's living off the grid. John Connor has grown up into a fully grown man. I'd kind of like, you know, somebody who could handle themselves. I mean, I like your idea when you said the Terminator should be Henry Cavill. I'm like, I'd like Henry Cavill from like Immortals, like that kind of lean frame, but I can fight. He has he's lived a life, so I say that he went through high school, he went into the military after school, became a soldier, you know, so he knows what he's doing. We could say he went to like, you know, maybe the Afghanistan conflict or one of those, and he lost an arm.
Mm-hmm.
So he now has a prosthetic arm.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into the reasons for that in a minute, but he's got a prosthetic arm, but he basically is living essentially an interesting but very normal life. He's a bit like a man named David Goggins. Like probably only Leo probably knows who David Goggins is, but he is he was like in the military, and he's like a super bred athlete, but he's like, you see him and he does talks and he writes books. John Connor's written books. He's written some books. He's basically an advocate for limiting technology, but not like not like a quote unquote crazy person who's out there like, you know, screaming that, you know, the end is nigh. No, he's like, listen, technology is all good and well, but the more we rely on technology, the more we remove our own abilities to do things. So, you know, he'll talk about like, he'll be the kind of guy who, you know, addresses how, kids don't know how to read a map anymore because all they know is, you know, GPS and Google Maps. So they don't know how to read maps. And he's, you know, walking around talking about the dangers of using too much technology. To feed into this more is his relationship with Sarah is, you know, it's not that he doesn't believe her, so he still has contact with her, and it's not, she basically, I have it that she's having PTSD. The events of Terminator 1 and 2 have taken their toll on her. She has PTSD, and she starts having these really vivid nightmares of, basically a Terminator coming after her and coming after John again, right? So it's, this is like 30 years later or 20 years later. She's having these nightmares. She's like, sort of like Stranger Things, like she'll be looking out a window and then she'll suddenly see this massive atomic fireball coming towards her, and then she'll react to it, realize it's not really happening, and be like, shit, like, am I losing it? Am I going crazy? She brings it up to John, who's, like, look, we did it. We won. We destroyed it. There's no Skynet. There's no technology. There's no Terminators. Nothing is left. So there's nothing to worry about. It's PTSD. And because of the fact that he was a soldier, he kind of has a better understanding of PTSD. So that's his kind of outlook. He doesn't completely dismiss it, but he just keeps it like, this is probably what it is. Fast forward again, we got now that we find out the reason he was able to finish school and go to the military is because he was then fostered by another family. The family I have him fostered by is the Dyson family, right? From Terminator 2. So it's just the mum and the 2 kids left.
Yeah.
Right? We have it that, after the events of Terminator 2, the mum, she's like, you know what? Whereas people would outlook is be like, oh, she's going to hate them. She's going to hate, the Connors for everything that happened. Her outlook isn't that. She's like, look, I saw with my own eyes the Terminator. So I can't look at it as, oh, yeah, you know what, you guys were full of shit. I saw that, Arnold Schwarzenegger rip his own hand off and have that cybernetic thing underneath. So I'm in, like, I understand. So she helps Sarah Connor. She helps her get her new identity. She fosters John. So that's how he finishes school. That's how he gets on to have a pretty, somewhat normal life. I think it's Danny, his son, Danny Dyson. Danny Dyson grows up now and he's, just as smart as his dad. He gets into robotics and things like that. But what he's doing is he's working on essentially, like John, he wants to kind of limit technology, but what he's working on is cybernetic implants. No, not even implants, but like cybernetic limbs for amputees. So, he's the one who fit John Connor's cybernetic arm, right? But it's a little bit more ahead of what we currently have. So it does have a very rudimentary AI to it, which is, taps into the brain, which allows them. So it's like, if you want to pick up a glass, it allows it, this is how it operates. This is why it works. However, the company he's working for, in a big, conference meeting, he finds out that they have acquired the remnants of Cyberdyne systems from the military. The military basically were like, we got no use for this no more. So anybody can have it. They get it. And they kind of, they highlight the fact that, it was like, well, one of our employees, his dad used to work for Cyberdyne systems, but he was tragically killed in an accident or whatever they refer to it as. So his outlook is like, okay, this is a bit suspect, is a bit worrying that you've acquired what's remnants of this system. It shouldn't exist. My dad destroyed it. But I'm like, a big project like that, Miles Dyson isn't the only person working on it. He might have been the lead, but he wouldn't be the only person. So there would be other people who have access to some of those files. So we have that going on, and then they get a specialist to come in, and specialist Specialist would be Arnold Schwarzenegger. He walks in, he's an old man, highly intelligent. We, kind of lead to the mindset of he is the person that they based the Terminators on. That's
they did that in T3, innit? That was in Terminator 3, that was a deleted scene.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that, but even better.
Oh, wait, you haven't seen the deleted scene?
No, I mean,
he's got a Texas accent in it. He walks in, he's got like a proper Texas accent. Like, it's so cheesy. It's so cheesy. It's really bad. But yeah, go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So he's, he has in that, and it's like this. That's the specialist. Now, obviously, Danny, as a little kid, remembers seeing a young, fresh-faced Arnie walking through his home you know, and is like, how the fuck are you alive? kind of thing, you know, because in from what he's understanding is, well, you know, you were there when these people ran into my house, shot my dad, took my dad, and then he died.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a bit concerned about this. He then calls up John, and their kind of outlook is like, he calls up John, he's speaking to John, and he explains to John what's going on. Now, I kind of have it that what John's done now is John's doing something. So he's got the call on loudspeaker. And I have it that Sarah overhears this. Sarah's outlook is like, oh, okay, well, it's simple to me. I'm suddenly having these nightmares. Skynet's clearly probably sent a fucking Terminator back in time to basically usher in Judgment Day to make sure it happens. I'm going to go and do exactly what I tried to do with Miles Dyson. I'm going to go strap up and go kill this bastard.
Mm-hmm.
So she decides to go off to kill the Terminator. And basically, by the time John and Miles, or John and Danny realize, they go after her. But what I say is when they get there, you know, she's dead.
Okay.
They get there, she's dead. Standing over her is Arnold, and it's just like, yeah, you know, he's just like, you know what? I'm not a Terminator. I'm human. You know, it's just like, okay, well, if you're human, then we can kill you. He's like, no, I defended myself. He kind of doesn't react like a Terminator, but long story short, the basic thing is that he's what's happened now is the remnants of Skynet, or the remnants of Cyberdyne Skynet, instead of trying to utilize, we're just going to make machines and do this, they try and do it another way. So they try and focus on making your human hybrids as like the first wave to get them in to do everything they need to do to follow on to get Judgment Day up and running.
Okay. I like how you said you didn't have a script, but then you pretty much had a script.
I was rambling.
So to clarify, your Terminator movie doesn't have a Terminator?
Not essentially. Well, my outlook is that the Terminators would be kind of I mean, a Terminator doesn't need to be a fucking machine. Like Sarah Connor is a Terminator in Terminator 2, right? The way she goes after Miles Dyson, that's some Terminator shit right there. But
Except she pushes out at the end, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Terminators don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Sasha, so what would you do?
I know, I want to hear what Leo would do.
Bro, to be honest with you, I wouldn't really do much. It's hard, isn't it? Because the way I see it is, I like Andreas's idea, but it would have to happen in like an alternate timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the shit that goes down in T2 and the way it builds onto, if you're going to take whatever, free Dark Fate or whatever the hell it is as canon, then it kind of does make sense, but she hasn't spoken about it. Does that make sense? Like, it alludes to it that she's been seeing a lot of. See, I need to rewatch Dark Fate because there's still questions that I don't know if I was paying attention and they didn't answer. Like, who gave the coordinates? Why? Who gave the tattoo coordinates to Sarah to who the fuck
Arnold.
was it? Who was it?
Arnold.
Yeah, who was it? Arnold that
Arnold.
tattooed the coordinates.
It was Arnold.
He's the one who was giving her the coordinates.
Yeah.
That she kept
No.
finding.
Who's the girl who goes back in time?
Mm-hmm.
The upgraded girl, yeah.
Yeah,
She has a tattoo on her. She has a tattoo on her body, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those tattoos are coordinates to get to Arnold, right?
Oh, right. So who gave her those coordinates?
Where did those coordinates come from? Who, like, she was like, my sergeant told me to tattoo these coordinates or whatever, and blah blah blah. Like, I have to remember these coordinates, but like, where did they come from? They don't talk about that. And like,
Can't remember off the top of my head. But
yeah, neither can I, and that's the problem. Like, I need to I bought it on iTunes. I'm going to rewatch it. But the other thing is, like, the whole time displacement thing and how like all of a sudden it's not called Skynet anymore, it's called something else.
Legion or something, is it?
Yeah,
Legion,
that's it. And how the Terminator is just aware of it, like he's just like, yeah, I'm just aware. And the bullshit explanation that went through that, like, I just thought that was pretty meh. That really annoyed me. Genesis, I think, this is be controversial, but I actually think Genesis is probably the best storyline that Terminator's had that's tried to move forward the plot into other shit. And the reason that people didn't like it is, and the thing is, like, I didn't think it was a fantastic movie, but I could see what they were trying to do. I was like, I get you. You're trying to move it into another completely direction. Like the guy who played Storm Shadow in the Korean guy in
yeah, he was pretty good in that.
G.I. Joe, yeah. He played a really good T-1000. I'm like, I could fucking believe this guy was a really good T-1000. I didn't mind the old Arnie. The younger thing, yeah, cool. But like making John Connor a Terminator at the end of that movie and being part of Skynet, I was like, didn't expect that. That's, didn't see that coming.
Didn't they show that in the trailer?
Yeah, they did.
No, it wasn't in the trailer, but it was on the poster.
Yeah, I don't know if I watched the trailers for that movie. I think I just watched it on Netflix.
I think it wasn't in the first couple of trailers, but I think it was in like the TV spot trailer. I think
it was in the actual trailer. It was in trailer 2.
But how would I fix it? I don't know, man. Like, to be honest with you, I wouldn't. Like, I would just leave it. Some things just need to be left alone. You can't fix the franchise. The franchise exists. You cannot fix it. If you take T1 and T2 as the movies that they are very cyclical, right? It's just like, this is the beginning, this is the end. Put the extended cut on T2, that's the end of that movie. If you're going to, you can't fix it, you can only just add on to. And then adding on to, you can make if you're going to add on, you have to get away. You have to get away from John Connor. You have to get away from Arnold Schwarzenegger.
What about the other option of rebooting?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, you could do a fresh reboot, but that would coincide with you having to get away from Arnold and Linda Hamilton and the idea of the Connors being the saviors.
Yeah, if I was going to do
it, because it's always going to be linked, right? You're always going to, like, if you look at what Neil said, like, I like what Neil's idea was, and I was listening to it, and I had previous thoughts, like maybe Danny Dyson like started like continuing on the works of his father, but you're just that, you know what that feels like to me? That feels like Independence Day 2, like how like why that kid has to become a pilot just like Will Smith was a pilot, like there was no need for it. And I just feel like if you just keep connecting it to the other shit, it's going to constantly be living in the shadow of Terminator 2, and that's the problem. The issue is, and like I said earlier, is that T2 blew its wad way too early. They made one of the best films ever, and it's one of those films like you shouldn't make another one. You should really have just stopped ages ago. Don't make the TV series. Don't make any more movies. Just leave it the fuck alone. Remaster it. Great. To add on to it, again, I mean, Andreas kind of hit it on the head, really. You got to reboot it. And if you're going to reboot it, you need to get away from... And how the fuck are you going to reboot it? Like, realistically, because, like, you're essentially just going to tell the same story, like, back in time. Because the whole shtick about Terminator is a robot from the future comes back in time. So, like, and he's way more advanced, way more powerful. So tell me another way that works, as opposed to, like, Terminator is being created now, then basically you just have iRobot. So it's like, it's going to be a really difficult thing to do. I just think personally you should kind of just leave it and stop making other Terminator films, and then just leave T2 the way it is with the extended cut.
If you remade that film, kind of lose the edge, because the thing is, as time goes by, that film just gets better and better. I mean, yeah,
exactly.
Sure, the ending with the limitations of the technology is a little bit ropey with the stop motion animation. Stop motion animation.
On the T-1000.
On T1. But, that's only until the end. And to be honest, it's...
Even that still looks good. It still looks good.
It's still very good. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
and
hell,
that
if
there's
they
no
brought it to
point in
special
touching.
edition,
Bro, they did it. They
Yeah.
they redid the special edition in like 2017. I bought it, and that looks amazing. All they did is like it's
Yeah.
one of those films you didn't need to do much to it. You just touched up the bit where like Arnold is jumping onto the LA River, and it's a stuntman, and same when he's moving over, when he's putting John Connor on the bike. And a few other bits
I'm not
just-
talking about that one. I'm talking about the original.
Oh, the original.
Yeah,
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about the
Okay, yeah. I
original.
mean, yeah.
No,
You
no.
could clean up the
Yeah.
original too, but that I watched that on Netflix the other day. I'm like,
Yeah,
this
and
is
it's fine.
still good.
It's fine.
Yeah,
it's
it's still
still
fine.
There's no.
And I
there's-
do like
yeah.
in Genesis where old Terminator, they they use the original footage or what looks like the
Yeah.
original footage for Terminator 1, and I was like, I appreciate that. You gave a nod to T1 as opposed to T2 and sucking that movie's dick all the time, and that was good too. Maybe, I guess, if you really wanted to do it, like have Michael Bean maybe not die. Like maybe start something with him, make it call it the Michael Bean Chronicles, talk about his story prior to becoming. I mean, they kind of touched upon that in Sarah Connor Chronicles, but like talk about his story prior to him becoming. And they did it. I mean, I guess they did it in what's it called, isn't it? In Terminator Salvation, but that film was pants. That film's stupid, and it ruins it. You know what ruins that movie for me? I'll be honest with you. Is the fact that John Connor jumps on a motorbike that's supposedly an autonomous robot, and then it's got no throttle, got no petrol, got no nothing. Yet he jumps on it and fucking rides off into the sun. And I was like, that's stupid. I was stupid.
So basically, Leo, you're saying, in your opinion, just don't touch it,
bro.
leave it.
Yeah, leave it. And if you're gonna reboot, like you said, which I'm down for. I mean, if you get James Cameron to do it, like that really should be the only person doing it. If you get James Cameron to do it,
I wouldn't get James Cameron to do it. I
really
don't give a shit about what James Cameron does right now. There are good directors that can go.
Yeah, James Cameron is over it, bro. Trust me.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, don't even talk to me about the next Avatar movie. I'm telling you, there are directors that could take it. Like the same way as Ryan Coogler took Rocky and made Creed. Yeah. That's the type of thing that you want. Yes, it's the same story retold a million times, but the execution was amazing. And tell me one Rocky movie where the fight scenes were as good as Creed, directed as good as Creed.
I can tell you that it's
none of them. They're all.
Bro, no, you're wrong. It's Rocky Balboa.
No, they're not. I've seen it a million times.
Okay, no,
you're saying that the fights in Rocky Balboa, which are good.
Hold on, let me just make my argument. Let me make my argument, and then I'll shut up. Let me make my argument. The one reason it's better is because when they're playing the Bill Conti theme, right, when he's fighting Mason the Lion Dixon, yeah, and then he's like getting.
1 minute, you're talking about Balboa.
Yeah.
Oh, the sixth one.
Fifth one.
Rocky 6. Yeah.
No, it's 5, isn't it? Is it 5?
No,
it's Rocky 5. It's Rocky 5.
Yeah. Rocky 5. I sometimes
Tommy
wash
Gunn.
that last one out. I wash out Tommy Gunn one. Because I'm like, Rocky saved. He stopped the Cold War. So, like, why else talk about the next one? But yeah, no, that scene in Rocky Balboa, just tangent for a second. That fight's the best. I urge you. But I'm not even going to go too much into it. I urge you, go back and watch all the Rocky fight scenes on YouTube. When you get to that one, and he's like standing there and he's bleeding, and he's like his muscles, that shot where you see his muscle tense, and the fight, and it's all black and white, and then like he gets punched in the face, and you see the photographer catches that one shot as his face. It sort of holds it for a second. Do you guys remember this?
Yeah, I remember.
Listen, I've seen every Rocky.
Yeah,
times,
and then that bit when he's getting his ass kicked and he's just there in the corner, and then the music builds up, and then you hear Mickey, bro. I almost fucking cried. You hear Mickey go through him, run over him, and then he's like, "Fuck it," gets up and he goes back, and it's like that's the only time apart from Rocky, after Rocky 5, where you see a flashback of Mickey like that, because the other time would have been in Rocky, maybe a little bit of Rocky 5 when he's like, "I didn't hear no bell, get up, you son of a bitch," because Mickey loves you. Like,
I get it, but I mean,
bro, rewatch it. That's all I'm saying. Just rewatch it. So that fight's the best one.
I'm with Andreas, because you know what? When I first saw Creed, the cinematography for that first fight, especially
The
where it's
one
all
takes.
one shot. Yeah, the
Yeah.
one takes. My jaw hit the floor because I was just like, wow. I was in awe with the choreography, the way the camera was moving with the fights. It brought a new energy to the picture as well, making it stand alone. As a movie by itself, yet being separate of the series before. I thought Creed was phenomenal, and I totally get where Andreas is going. By the way, I totally agree with you with the stripped down Terminator thing, because I've always felt that with all the Terminator movies that have come on since 2, just like Leo said, they've tried to top Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And they've never even come close. There's no cigar for any of these things. But there are bits from all the Terminator movies, even the shit ones, that I've kind of liked certain bits, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
For example, with Dark Fate, I was totally geared up to see Linda Hamilton again kicking ass, and finding out that she was a Terminator killer and stuff. I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds up my alley. That sounds fucking hardcore. And that would totally be what Sarah Connor would have become, if that makes sense. Unfortunately, that was the only part of Dark Fate that I actually liked, realistically, because it goes back to the fact that when it comes to the villain, they're always trying to have a gimmick. You know what I mean? And I don't like gimmicks. Okay, T1000 was ahead of its time. You can't top that, so don't top that. Go back, have a T800, have a new actor play as the T800, maybe a Henry Cavill. Hell, you know what? The original idea for the Terminator was supposed to be anybody.
OJ.
It only changed because they cast Arnold. It doesn't even have to be a muscle-bound man.
Bro, it was supposed to be O.J. Simpson. Do you remember?
No,
and then they said that he
he
would never pass off as somebody who could be a killer, and then he had
So the story behind the O.J. Simpson thing was he auditioned and didn't get the role. That was it. It was never meant to be him. I've forgotten who the studio wanted as the Terminator himself, but because Arnold actually auditioned for Reese, who James Cameron had in mind for the Terminator was
Arnold
actually Arnold was supposed to be Reese, and then he wanted to be the Terminator, and then James Cameron's like, well, that changes the whole idea. That's why it's a cop in the second one, because the original guy that was supposed to be the Terminator was Bishop from Alien.
Lance Henriksen.
Who ended up being the cop in the movie. Now, Lance Henriksen, if you look at the DVD of the Terminator or the Blu-ray of the Terminator and watch the making of, James Cameron actually drew a picture of Lance Henriksen with the gun against his chin kind of thing, and showed what he'd look like. There's concept art of him as the Terminator. And I'd actually go back to that concept of the T-800 can be anyone. Fuck, it could be Doc Cotton as far as I'm concerned. It gets some old lady broad and shit. But this is the thing. This is the thing. No one wants to see Doc Cotton, but the thing is, I would call my movie Terminators, In Vain of Alien, In Vain of Aliens. And I would have like multiple different Terminators. I would have an Arnold cameo just for the tip to the hat, but I wouldn't have him in it as much. You know what I mean? It's just that little small little gesture to the series that I'm in, because you want to have new leads. You want to spend less money on, because if you had Arnold throughout it, that's a lot of money being spent. 1, his wage, 2, CGI and stuff. A little day's worth of shooting and that. For a little,
just do what they did in the Rundown, innit? You ever seen the Rundown?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
When he walks past them in the bar and he's like, so what did you say to him? Good luck. He just says good luck or something.
I would have like 6 Terminators of different people, kind of thing. Like old lady Terminator, fucking big muscle band guy.
Bruv, have a whole family. 2 parents, 2 kids of different ages.
That would bring new meaning to the nuclear family, innit? 2.4 kids, all Terminators.
The point being,
trying to bring about Judgment Day.
But the point being is, I like stuff like what they did with Sarah Connor Chronicles, and kind of what they did with Dark Fate, where you had like Terminators with different missions and stuff that were there to build up the Skynet of the future. Because I like the concept of Sarah Connor being our Terminator killer. I like concept of having her and John not haven't talked for decades, because he's like, yo, we finished it, you know what I mean, blah blah blah. But then comes, you know, the thing I liked about T3 was that Judgment Day happened, you know what I mean, and because it would be like a reboot, let's give us the real Terminator 3. And the reason why it has to go through the motions is because we're re-jump starting the whole thing for people that have never seen it. Do you know what I mean? This thing happened, it separated a mother and a son, you know what I mean? They don't, you know, maybe he's married to the girl that should have been like his lieutenant or whatnot. Do you know what I mean? And what it is, because he's lived off the grid, they can't find him. You know what I mean? They can't find him at all. And not even that, he's not even the priority anymore. You know, maybe it's someone else, what they tried to do with Dark Fate, but I don't know, man. It's hard because when I think of this idea, I'm thinking, does it live up to T2? No, it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Which brings me back to what I discussed in the chat before. Nothing can. Nothing we even fucking, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. Maybe it had a writer's room or whatnot, but I do think the big...
And that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does it live up to T2?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you can't.
It'll always be compared to T2. No matter what you do. I don't care what anyone said. This is the end. Like, realistically, let's be honest. Reboot it, do whatever you want to it. It will always be compared to the original franchise. Yeah. And then you're always going to go, everyone's always going to say, and I don't know, a single human being who doesn't turn around to me and go, yeah, fuck the rest of those movies, just end it with T2 and leave it there. Yeah. I think if they did, we would all be happy. Fuck the rest of these movies. Don't get me wrong, they're enjoyable, you can watch them, happy days. But Andres is right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're always just going to compare it to T2. And
yeah, but that's why I have a little clause to that. My clause is T1 is so different to T2.
Yeah, exactly.
That you don't need, if you made something stripped back, it's almost like a sci-fi horror. You won't compare it to T2 because T2 is a brilliant action movie.
Okay,
it's true.
I've got
yeah,
one.
I just don't know. I don't know. Me personally, like, I don't know how I can watch See, I never saw Terminator 2 as a horror film. I just saw it as a chase movie.
Well, it was.
Terminator 1?
Yeah.
Or Terminator 2?
Terminator 1.
Terminator 1.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I only saw Terminator 1 as a chase movie. I was never scared of Terminator. I can understand why people...
What age did you see Terminator?
I think...
10?
Maybe about 10. Jesus, man,
okay.
my parents, social services should have been around my house. All the fucking films I should have watched, but not just for that. I'm sure for other reasons too. But the point is that, like, I never saw T2 as a horror film, so that maybe that's probably why I have the idea of meshing it with a sci-fi horror is that I've never seen it. Like, if you want a sci-fi horror, like Event Horizon, that's a sci-fi horror. Alien, the first one, that to me is also a sci-fi horror. But T2 just didn't fall. T1, sorry, didn't fall into a sci-fi horror for me. Okay. Hence why, me personally, I would never be able to link it to that. I can't link it to that franchise.
I got another idea.
I'm interested to see. Hold on. I'm interested to see, Andreas. Like, maybe you can tell me now. Like, just because I'm genuinely would be. How would you make it sci-fi horror?
Well,
like, I mean, how would you bring it to that genre?
I want to hear Sasha's idea, but yeah, I mean, when I say horror, it's in a loose way. It's not like Friday the 13th.
It's more suspense.
Yeah.
Like Invisible Man.
Horror, like Invisible Man was like a sci-fi thriller, and it's more of a roller coaster ride of a, like, you know, the movie Don't Breathe, where they break into the blind man's house, and it's just like your heart is stopped all the way through it, and it's, you know, that sort of like, so maybe horror is not the right word, but it takes you to that thriller, and you're, you know, it is like a chase movie, but it's just stripped back. I think that's the only way you'd be able to do something that people don't compare it to T2, which is more like a sci-fi action
I mean,
film,
I guess it would be good as well, because you don't have modern day technology, because modern day technology makes things way too, I don't know, like, it just makes things way too, you know, very much like I can just hack into the phone and I know where they are. Like, I liked the tactile aesthetic of things like in Alien, and when they're like, everything's very analog. And if you look at like even in T2, like the Terminator has all that information in his brain, but the T1000 has to look it up on the police computer. Like he can't just pull out his phone and be like, Waze me to this address, please. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's, I guess that would make it the thriller part of it. Like that would make it you don't have the other sort of technology get. Because if you look at T3, like what does the Terminator, what does the TX do? She like hacks into police cars and shit. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And they start chasing after everybody. Like, I mean, even when that film came out, that wasn't possible. But yeah, I guess.
Sasha, what's your idea then?
Yeah.
This is just something I just thought about while we've been doing the podcast. It's not really something I've had for ages. I mean, like, stereotypically, I think I've always thought of it, like I said, maybe a remake of T3, but the T3 we always wanted. But during this podcast, back to the stripped down thing, I would probably do something where it's set in the future, kind of like Salvation, but actually with the aesthetic of 1 and 2, that future, if that makes sense. I would set it in an outpost, just an outpost, a resistance outpost, one contained area, a squad of soldiers, and all these characters are new to the franchise kind of thing. You have a general, blah, blah, blah. But our main protagonist is Reese.
Okay.
So let me just clarify. Basically, the game Terminator Resistance.
Is that what it is?
Right in the beginning.
Is that what it is?
Okay, what you're saying they should make into a movie? Let me just.
Yeah, sure.
So
Why not? They should make it into a trilogy, but the first one should just be an outpost.
Do you know what? That's a really
where
good idea,
where they're trying to defend their outpost, where they're trying to defend the outpost.
That you said, but
and that way you could open the world to the audience of what that futuristic world is like.
Do it like Battle Los Angeles, Battle Los Angeles, but in the future with Terminators.
Yeah, but like kind of, when I say like where it shows the world, like how Star Wars shows the world where it's all done in visuals, but not really saying this is what it is. You're showing the world in how these guys live in that outpost and stuff, and then every time it turns to nighttime, they've got to take down and destroy Terminators. You don't necessarily have to see them straight away, but you know what they are, and they're all T-800s, if you know what I mean. So it's like no CGI bollocks and shit, and it's just literally an outpost movie about soldiers.
So Terminator Resistance, the game, the movie.
Without knowing the game, I think my take, similar to what Sasha just come up with actually. So my take is that Skynet has learned from its mistakes in terms of sending Terminators back, because it's always going to be learning, right? So it's learning from sending it back that it can't change the way that they believe it is going to happen. So instead of trying to enforce Judgment Day, they learn to adapt. And what they do is they create Terminators, but with a different kind of artificial intelligence, in the fact that they can pass as human, both physically, but in a mental communication capacity as well. And what Skynet actually does is they start putting Terminators into places of power. So in sort of like presidential positions, laws.
Similar to
Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Yeah. Oh, is it right? So they control the public.
I didn't want to burst your bubble there, but I was gonna I was just gonna let you go.
Oh, okay. Well,
hit you at
but
the
it hasn't been done as a movie. But it hasn't been.
That's true.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, not a lot of people know about that TV show.
I didn't know about it.
So it's a case of them influencing the world to be under their control, but without the devastation and the apocalypse, basically. So then you have basically somebody who starts to notice, a little bit like the Matrix, they start to notice things aren't quite right, and they feel that they are being manipulated in a way that they're not aware of, and they discover the fact that these Terminators are happening, and where they are and what they're capable of. And so then you'll have a group of maybe 2 to 4 who are this kind of resistance, who are going to try and expose them for what they are. And then that's when you get your chase horror movie bit, where specific Terminators are then released to chase them down, to stop them revealing the process. And so what you then have is in a modern day, but not in a, like you say, an apocalyptic way. You know, like
You're
all the
kind of talking about
destruction.
kind of like that film They Live.
I haven't
Yes,
seen
that's
that.
what that you haven't
Oh,
seen They
yeah.
Live.
No, I haven't seen
Okay,
that.
it's a good.
Bro, Roddy
it's-
Roddy Piper. You know the guy when he goes, "I've come to kick ass and chew
I
bubble
know
gum,"
that
and I'm all,
line, but I've not seen the movie.
yeah, it's
Oh,
from the
man.
film They Live. Yeah, when he puts
Okay.
on glasses and he sees Obey on
Yeah.
the signs, and then
Obey,
he
the
takes it off and
classic.
it's something else. And you can
Right.
see people and they look differently. Like, yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay,
basically what you
So,
described. Kind of like
right.
that. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I like that.
So
I like your
that way
idea,
you
Ken.
bring in you don't have to set it in sort of like between Terminator 1 and 2 because it can look quite modern, but without having, you know, the dystopian future kind of thing. You can have it as the gritty, because I think the big mistake a lot of the movies make is they try and make it too big. It's huge set pieces, it's huge action pieces, it's planes, it's the dam in the last one. It needs to be localized centrally. So like a building, like take the Raid, you know, like Terminator's coming up through a building and they're running up a building trying to escape them kind of thing and trying to figure out ways to take them out within that building. You know, it could be something very, very localized, like Andrea said, very low budget. And it brings that like horror and suspense factor, you know, and you, like Sasha says, you could have 4 or 5 Terminators and these guys are trying to take these Terminators out one by one, but then also some of these party get killed along the way, and then it might come down to 2-on-1 or a 1-on-1 at the end, a little bit like Predator style, you know.
What about having one Terminator who's like, say you said it in the future,
Mhm.
I don't just made this up on the spot, but say you said it in the future, right? AI, okay? So
Mhm.
what about if you had it kind of like one Terminator is like starts questioning what he's doing, like
You could have a
Chappie
Terminator
almost,
switch. Yeah.
and then he's like, hold on a minute, this ain't right. Like maybe he sees some humans and they're in trouble, and he's like, yo, like I guess that's kind of Terminator Salvation anyway, isn't it? So
I mean, you could take
That's
it from
Dark
a
Fate,
you could
isn't
take
it?
it from a stance of that one where somebody's used technology for a little bit like RoboCop. Someone's injured, they put some stuff in him, so he has the human and the Terminator.
Salvation, though, isn't it?
No,
Yeah.
do you know what I would do?
But then you're taking it from its own franchise, so you're using elements within his franchise to create something.
Nothing's original these days, guys.
No, it
apparently.
isn't, and you can't with
No,
this
no,
one.
hey,
Like you said, at the end of the day, is Terminator's coming back in time. So what you're doing is you're taking out the time travel element, and you're just making it a hard chase movie. And so that's the difference. You take out the time factor. So not everyone's like, oh, but this has to happen, for this has to happen. Everything that's happened in the past has happened. So T1 and T2 could have happened. And then you have this as the kind of that spin-off from that. It's sort of might
Ken,
be an alternate reality.
what year is your movie set in? Just so I'm getting a picture.
It
'Cause
could
I
be
like your
sort of
idea.
like it could be 20
Present day now?
it could be like 2029 when the original one happened, but they didn't do Judgment Day. So they got to
Right.
the plan where they wanted to be, but just in a different way.
But could it be just now, 2020, the year?
Yeah,
where
it could be
was made?
2020. Yeah, exactly. It'll be a continuation from the timeline of T2 because ultimately they still had the arm left over in the cog
I like your idea.
where he got taken off, and that brings it just to more reality based, so you don't have to go super sci-fi on it.
Yeah.
What? Hold on. What
I
arm?
like that.
So when
At the
he's
end of
fighting the
Terminator.
T1000,
Oh,
he gets
yeah,
his
yeah,
arm
yeah,
trapped.
yeah, yeah. He
So they
loses his
throw the
arm,
one from
yeah,
the
yeah.
backpack into there, but then they leave the
Did
one.
they
in
ever
the cog.
address that?
Not to my knowledge.
What?
No, yeah, no.
Did they ever address what?
Yeah, when
They
he
got
loses,
there.
when
There was
he's
two
fighting the
arms there and
T1000 and he loses his arm, and then the T1000 impales him. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Impales the T800.
No,
So that
the
arm is still stuck in the cog.
Yeah.
No,
Did they
the arm
ever?
crushed in the cod? Because that's why.
Yeah,
it's
yeah, but
put
it's
away,
in
'cause
there.
it was-
though,
It
isn't
got
it?
crushed, but it's still there. It's an exoskeleton arm, so that's it wouldn't have
Yeah.
been into little fragments.
Mm.
The basis of it would still be there.
Mm.
Yeah, they never addressed that. Well, maybe he had it on him when he just threw himself down and he couldn't self-terminate, and he just picked it up and fucking went along. I don't know, who knows?
Yeah, could have.
But anyway, that's me all terminated out, man. I got nothing else to say on the subject, really.
Yeah,
It's funny because a few things have rolled through my head while we've been having this discussion. One, to touch on what you said, Ken, one thing that you could do is, I mean, maybe this is a bit too Star Trek like, but I mean, if they're always trying to perfect artificial intelligence, right?
hmm
Now I'm like, okay, they're making Terminators, and the whole idea of the T800 series is that they can blend in.
Yeah.
Right. So by making them blend in, you start incorporating as many kind of human mental facets as you can,
Mhm.
which leads directly to empathy,
Yeah.
morality, and then that's where you could take it. You can
It's
go
like they
from
have the possibility. So like in T2 is about the learning thing, right? So they
Yeah.
need to be able to learn. So instead of being directed by Skynet and just having a program, they're actually able to learn. And then what you have is a cameo is you have Schwarzenegger as a Terminator, as a governor or president in the movie.
Yeah, right. But one thing that did kind of come through my head, it was a bit basically taking elements from the TV show, but also one element from Terminator 3 that a lot of people kind of just skipped over was the TX, right?
Yep.
Doesn't immediately go after John Connor. In fact, I don't think she does go after John
She goes
Connor.
after his generals.
She goes after all his generals. And I'm like, well, that's a movie right there, which is like, because that you can have it fresh. You can have, it's the same kind of through line of plot and things, but it's fresh characters, and fresh characters can react very differently to how John Connor would react, because these fresh characters are basically Sarah Connor from Terminator 1. They have no idea any of this is happening. They don't know how to react to any of these things. And it could set up dramatic irony, because it will be things of like, people as fans know what you're supposed to do when you're dealing with a Terminator. But how does a character who's not John Connor, who was raised with his mom telling him, this is how you deal with the Terminators, this is how you deal with Terminators, how do you effectively deal with that? Because that whole thing of going after the generals is perfect, because at the end of the day, yes, John Connor is the person who rallied the humans together, but if John Connor's gone, you still have the generals.
Yeah, it's going to be a what the F moment. It's like, how do we deal with this? And I think that's what you need to be bringing into the franchise. I think it was T3 as well. In so many of these movies, the central characters get into contact with too many other characters, and they have too big a support network in a sense. So it's more of a case of it needs to be brought and scaled back. Like you said, less people know, the better, and just people not believing them. That's the whole point. It's like, this thing's running around, it's trying to kill me. It's like, shut up. So, and that's what you need to bring back to the franchise.
I think anyway, if they did it, the only thing I'd need to hear is I just never want to hear the name Connor in any capacity. I'm just tired of it. You're not tired of it? You're just tired of hearing John Connor, Sarah Connor? Gives a fuck. Give me something else. Make it Steve Smith.
Yeah, I mean, you could go off the end of Dark Fate and just have John Connor dead. You could just have like a one of these buildings in his name or something like that. Who knows?
Bro, Andreas, man, you have to watch at least just that scene.
I have to say, you have all convinced me to watch number 3, number 4, and number 5.
Bro, just watch Dark Fate. Forget the rest. Just watch Dark Fate. Just watch Dark Fate.
In fact, that's the thing, Andreas. What I would advise you to do is, well, I mean, it's like, it may be a different that other people would say. I would say watch Terminator Dark Fate.
Yes.
To watch what is essentially at this present moment the canon Terminator 3. Then watch the actual Terminator 3.
And then Genesis.
Salvation and Genesis.
Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do Dark Fate, number 3, Salvation and Genesis. Cool.
And if you really have enough time on your hands, watch the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
If you have a look on the group, by the way, I posted the video.
I saw it.
I'll be honest. The first season of Sarah Connor Chronicles was actually pretty decent.
Yeah,
was actually pretty decent. The only reason
the cliffhanger it ended on was very interesting to me.
Yeah, it's a shame because they cancelled it and they left it on a huge cliffhanger, and it was like, well, they ain't getting resolved. They ain't getting resolved ever.
There's some theory that says about the T-1000. Apparently, T-1000 is like godlike. Apparently, someone correct me if they read it up, but the T-1000 is does not answer to Skynet. Skynet cannot control the T-1000. Apparently,
that's the first time I've ever heard of that. But
that's the first time. But I mean, if you think
do you know what I was watching? I was watching Fact Fiend. Fact Fiend talked about it, and they said the T-1000 is apparently not tethered to Skynet in the manner of which everything else is, and can actually defy Skynet's instructions.
Okay. Or maybe you change it up completely and have Skynet send a T-1000 back to Egyptian times, and it ends up in a pyramid, and then you have a horror chase movie in a pyramid when someone releases a T.
And that explains that will explain the fucking what's it called? The Transformers in Transformers 2.
There you go.
And the pyramid.
All right, time to terminate this podcast. So
you did that. You did that.
So where can we find you guys on social media?
You can find me on Mr. _Ovaltine Jenkins on Ovaltine as in the drink and Jenkins with J. However else you'd spell it. On Instagram. That's where I post random pictures about stuff that I draw, and What's the Damage podcast on Facebook.
Cool. I think we need to see a Terminator picture, Leo.
You can find me.
No.
You can
Andreas?
find me somewhere on the internet. Just search for my band, Muddy Loop, MUDDYLOOP.
Cool. Neil?
You can find me on Shoot for Moon pics on Instagram. That's the number 4 Moon PICS. You'll just see a lot of stuff.
What you've been eating.
Yeah, basically. Well, no, because it's like the keto diet. You ain't shit that I eat.
Sasha, where can we find you?
Sashman3 on Twitter. And be sure to check out Antstream, a platform where you can play lots of retro games. There are thousands of them, old arcade games, Amiga games, Commodore 64 and Spectrum games. There's all kinds of video games. Go check it out for your retro goodness.
This podcast is sponsored
or just get a Raspberry Pi. Just get a Raspberry Pi.
Right, you can follow me on Twitter at KenanTalksFilm. Please let us know your thoughts on this episode and suggest some movies for us to discuss in the future. You can catch all our episodes on YouTube, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. If you like what we do, please like, subscribe, and share our podcast across social media. If you thought this podcast sucked, then just like, subscribe, and share ironically. Thanks very much, guys. Until next time.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye.
Hey.